Hey, what's up? This is David. I got this Nano QX for Christmas, and I got this 4-port charger and 3 batteries. So, and there's my controller and goggles over there. And so I got the 4-port charger because I knew I was going to be flying a lot. But I've had 2 separate issues with it so far. The second issue I'm going to address first, and that's the wobble, and I'll add the video right after this and you can see for yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where it's wobbling side to side. You know, I can fly it, but it's a handful. You know, it's just shaking in the air, side to side, like in roll and pitch, actually a little bit.
Now that phone call the guy was on there at the hobby shop, I actually talked to the manufacturer and they sent me a new board. But right after I got home, I wondered, because he took the cover off of it and it appeared like he snapped the board back down, and it started flying again. Fine. Like sometimes it would do this and sometimes it would fly fine, but when he took the cover off and snapped it back down, it started flying fine again. So I brought it home, and before I got the new board in, they sent me a new board. Horizon Hobby did, because it was shaking. But before I got that in, it started flying fine. So I've been flying it for the last few days, multiple times a day probably. You know, I've got 3 batteries, so I'll fly 3 in a row and then wait a while and fly 3 more. And so it's been flying fine. But anyway, the second issue, which is actually the first thing that went wrong, was the camera quit working. So there's that wire that leads up to the camera right here. And you see how the wire is hanging down below like that? Eventually what happens is this part up here where it's soldered into the board, I don't know if you can see it, just from like touch and goes, like on a soft surface like this, that wire gets jiggled, and eventually after a while it breaks loose from the solder. So when I took it in, they resoldered it back on the camera board on the front, right up here. I don't know if you can see that. Anyway, it's kind of hard to see. And as you can tell, the wires are burned now, because what happened was, again, after a while of use, I didn't know this, but it was working fine for a while. And what happened was is that black wire broke loose again, and you can tell, you can see how it, hang on a second. I'm trying to zoom this in on the black wire broke loose and it fused onto the red wire, which caused a short. Let me try the other camera. Okay, there you can see the black wire where they resoldered it onto the board and it was fine, and then the black wire eventually, from use, from it just dangling down and you know, changing the batteries out and everything, it fused down here together, which obviously burned up these 2 wires and this connection point, as well as that connection point to the battery. Now when that happened, it happened when I first plugged this battery in and I set it on the table, and I could hear it. It started smoking and started sizzling. I could hear it sizzling, so I'd knock this connection point off right there on the battery. I've got the connection over there, but basically it just melted that whole wire there. This one appears fine. Actually, the it started up and it was like blinking normal and everything. It didn't fly, of course, because all the power was being drained by this wire here that was shorted. But one thing I noticed that you can see it easier on this board here is that when on this main board where the connection is, there's a bit of goo that kind of holds it in place, because when you're connecting and disconnecting the battery from the unit, there's gonna be a lot of stress on these two wires where they go into the board where the solder is, and eventually it's gonna break. However, from the factory, that's not the case when it comes to the camera board up front, which is obviously a separate section of wire. And of course, when it's hanging down like this, it's all fried now. But when you're landing it on, soft objects like this, or at any time, it's going to touch, and it constantly puts stress on these wires up here, and eventually they're going to break. And this one has broken twice. And the first time there was no evidence of any shorting, but obviously this time there was a little bit of exposed wire on the back side here, and it touched you can see right there where it touched. It fused together with the red wire and caused a short, and so it fried these two wires here, connection point and connection point, and obviously these up here are still fine. And actually I think this main board is still operational. If I had a good wire here, or a good connection point here, I could probably just replace the battery and be good to go. But obviously it got pretty hot, and it smoked up pretty good. But other than that, man, I've been flying the heck out of this thing. I love the FPV option on it. But I'm wondering why they didn't put the goo on this camera board down here, to keep it more structurally sound, I guess, or to relieve the stresses of that wire being dangled down there like that, because that's where all the stress is, and there's nothing there, nothing down here to keep it from to help it from being constantly moved about, because eventually that wire is going to break. I don't care how strong it is or anything. It's not tied up or anything that would help relieve the stress either. So those are the two things that I've seen so far. But obviously, this thing was flying fine. I mean, it's had when it had the wobbling issue, I replaced all 4 blades, brand new blades, and it still did the same thing. I took it to the hobby shop, and the guy did the same thing. I replaced the blades again. It was still doing it. But when he snapped the board back down into the frame, he took the cover off and snapped it back down in the frame. I brought it home. I don't think we flew it after that, but when I brought it home, it was flying fine. So I've been flying it for the last few days, or last week or so, and several times a day, and it's been flying fine until yesterday, when that wire fused together and it burned up the connection points. And just so happens that I got the new board in yesterday, so I'm gonna take it up there and let them replace this and show them what happened. But it's pretty interesting, I thought. So I'm gonna try to get them to figure out a way to better secure those 2 wires there. I'm not even sure if they have those wires in stock, but we'll see. We'll see if it still flies after that too. Well, I've got the new board, so it doesn't really matter. So, but anyway, that's been my experience with the QX so far. For the most part, it's perfect. I love it. It flies great. It's, I've even learned to do circles and figure 8s and stuff, which is one of the most difficult things to learn, I guess, as a beginner. So, and having these multi-charger with multi-batteries, I was able to do back-to-back flights, which made it a lot easier to learn. But other than that, man, I really love this thing. A friend of mine has the regular QX without the FPV, and that's why I went ahead and got this one, because I had the FPV. But other than that, I think it's been a great little toy. I guess it is a toy. But anyway, that's it.